you're selling an opportunity for someone else to grow your business. So like, how do you preserve that white space while maximizing your value where you are to like maximize your exit? That's kind of like that's the puzzle I like to figure out. I think that's fun.
Morgan Zanotti. It doesn't even feel like work. It feels like fun. I'm so glad you're here.
I know. It's been forever.
I know.
6 boys later.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a mom of 3 boys.
Yeah.
We'll give Mark Sisson credit, but you basically ran Primal Kitchen with Mark.
Yes.
He might have been the head, but you were the neck, as they say, in my big fat Greek wedding.
Yes.
Doing all the grunt work, making sure it was happening. And fast forward, Primal sells to Heinz. Now you're consulting. It's been like a major, big career, but it didn't always look like this.
No.
So I feel like it's so important because we knew each other back in the day, like the real gritty, resilient, scrappy. And I just like that kind of life. Let's start at the beginning. Like you graduate from college. How did you even get a job with Mark Sisson at Primal Kitchen?
Well, you want me to go all the way back to like college days? Okay, so
I go all the way back to like, because I think people don't even know what they want to do when they grow up.
Yeah.
And you I think you've done a really good job of gut pings, following your intuition and taking some risk, and it's paid off.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Chicago, so I think the Midwest grit is real. So I have to give credit to that. But was always a camp girl, had like a travel obsession. Graduate college, I got 2 job offers, one to be a recruiter and one to be an accountant. And I took the recruiting job because it came with a BlackBerry. This was 2006 or 2007, maybe 2006. And I lasted like 4 days. And then I was like, oh, I hate doing this. So I quit and called the accounting firm. And I was like, can I have that job you offered me that I declined? And they were like, sure, we'll take you. So I went to work at the accounting firm for like 9 months. Mm-hmm. And then I just planned to leave the country. So the whole time I quit to be a waitress at my aunt and uncle's resort in northern Wisconsin. That's like Dirty Dancing in real life. And I waitressed there, made more money than I did as an accountant. And then I lived for 2.5 years in South America off a budget of like $8,000 a year. And I was doing research for a political author. Okay. This is a lot. So a friend of mine who actually was qualified for this research position didn't want to do it. And I was like, I'll do it. And then the book became a #1 New York Times bestseller. I'm the first name in the acknowledgments. And he just kept asking me to do more books for him. So I had all this waitressing, accounting money saved up. I was making maybe like $12 to $14K a year, but I was living off $8,000 a year in South America. Okay. Then I get my yoga certification in Hawaii, as you do in your 20s, right? And blew through more money in 6 months in Hawaii than I did in 2 years in South America. Came home, had like a total like reverse culture shock, quarter life crisis. Like, what am I doing? I'm so behind in life. All my friends have these like careers. They live in downtown Chicago and I'm just like lost, right? Like I'm totally lost. I like don't belong full-time in South America, but I don't know where I belong here. So I was like, maybe I want to be a nurse. Maybe I want to be a sex therapist. Maybe I want to be a naturopathic doctor. I mean, these were like actual careers I like seriously looked into, but ended up going to work in an advertising agency as an account exec, worked there for 2.5 years, managed the Frito-Lay account, specifically their growth ventures portfolio, which is like all the brands that don't have Frito-Lay on the packaging. So I did that. And then I surfed Lake Michigan. I fell in love with surfing in South America. So I surfed Lake Michigan, which you have to surf.
I didn't know they had waves.
Yeah, you have to surf storm swell in the winter. So I was in like a 5mm wetsuit with like booties and a hood, icicles. I lasted like 20 minutes. Icicles were going down from my face. And I was like, okay, check the bucket list. And like, what am I doing here? And then I was 28 at that point in time, had a boyfriend of like 2.5 years. I like did the responsible thing, broke up with my Midwest boyfriend, moved to California, knew no one. But I surfed in Manhattan Beach like once and I was like, oh, I'm done. Like I'm moving here. Like I had never been to California. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? I moved like 3 months later. And then I like applied for a job. I fell in love with like the whole health and wellness space along the way. Like I met a woman from California and Colombia. She turned me onto this cleanse. I had my own like typical, you know.
Girl stuff.
Well, not even girl stuff, like the health journey that like everyone, haven't you seen those memes that's like, my son was pooping blood and I had a rash. And so we launched this natural food company. And it's like every natural food company's story is the same. Like someone was sick.
Autoimmune disease.
Yes. And then, so I kind of had like that journey of my own. Yeah. And then, but yeah, so I applied. I like reached out randomly to this guy on LinkedIn who was a VP of sales for KeVita.
Yeah.
And they were hiring a director of marketing, which I was very much not qualified to do, but I got the job, did that.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people undervalue their worth, or they're not willing to put themselves out there. And I think one of your shining qualities is that you will throw yourself into a room with a bunch of people that maybe have had more experience than you,
Yeah.
and you know your worth. Like, what is that? Like, what does that come from? Is that like from your family? Is it from your experience? Is it just innate?
No, I actually have like a huge case of imposter syndrome. So I wouldn't say I'm the poster child for knowing their worth. I think I'm more of the poster child for like knowing I have no idea what I'm doing and doing it anyway, right?
Okay.
Like, and owning the fact that like I really don't know what I'm doing. Like at Kraft Heinz all the time, I'll be on a meeting. I remember one time these like consultants for Bain. So we launched Primal Kitchen, we sold it to Kraft Heinz. So then I really have imposter syndrome because then I'm like in the room with people who operate in just like a totally different way than me, right? Like there was never a meeting with a PowerPoint presentation before we sold Primal Kitchen, like not one.
And I love that we call them PowerPoint presentations.
Which is apparently
like decks.
It's a deck.
It's a deck.
And I'm like, what is a deck? Because we just missed that. Thank God. Because I'm like terrible at that. But I remember being on a meeting once with this Bain consultant. They were like, okay, do you want to take pen? And I was like, I'm sorry, like, what are you talking about? And they're like, take pen. Do you want to take pen now? And I was like, no, like I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, oh, that just means like you edit the PowerPoint deck now. And I was like, well, can you just say that? So that was like kind of the epitome of my whole experience. So a lot of just like never really, I feel like if you're not in a role where you kind of feel like you don't know what you're doing, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you have to feel out of your comfort zone. You have to feel nervous.
Yeah.
I'm like sweaty armpits. Who am I talking to?
Totally.
How are we getting this done? And you're just like working on the back end to figure it out and show up.
Yeah.
So you're director of marketing for KeVita.
Yeah.
And how long are you in this role? What are you doing? It's a large enough brand that I knew what it was when we met the first time when you were working for Primal.
Yeah.
It's kefir water, right?
Yes. And very early, they were like the number two player in the kombucha space. It was like GT's kombucha and KeVita was kind of the number two. So I was there when they were like in a garage, sub 10 million in revenue, structuring their buyout with PepsiCo. So Pepsi ended up buying them, but they had like a deal structured with Pepsi when they were like very small. Like, and then it was kind of like a sort of acquisition where once they get to a certain point, there's a calculation on how much the company sold for 300 million or something like that. But I was long gone. I lasted like 9 months.
Okay.
I met Mark when I was working at KeVita, and yeah.
So were you working in the garage at KeVita and then working in Mark's garage?
I was working in the garage at KeVita and then Mark's like mansion in Malibu when I was working for Mark. No, we launched Primal Kitchen out of the Malibu Chamber of Commerce. We had like a small office. Like our first pallet of mayonnaise came and we had to like hand unload it, which this is comical for anyone who's ever seen like a real CPG operation, but we had to hand unload it and put it into like a storage room at the Malibu Chamber of Commerce and then like load pallets manually for when we started shipping stuff out. We grew out of it like 3 months after we launched the mayonnaise, but yeah.
I think that's because you had everyone on subscription, and I had like 12 jars of mayonnaise at one point. Like, how am I going to get through this?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, we launched with what we thought was a year's supply of inventory, and it sold out in a week.
I mean,
so
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. Crazy.
There's a lot of people who want to be trad wives and traditional home and homesteading and making their own mayonnaise, but for a lot of us, it was difficult. You have to have like hand emulsion blender, and then like how long does it last?
It's impossible.
But it took the guesswork out of it, and you were using avocado oil, not seed oils, which is like this aha moment. And it didn't taste sweet like Miracle Whip. It tasted savory like Best Food. So in your experience in CPG, like from KeVita, well, Frito-Lay way back in the day, but that was different. From KeVita to Heinz, now at Primal Kitchen, how much does like consumer experience, like taste, texture, feel, like how much did that play a role into you think Primal Kitchen's success? And like what failures did you have along the way with mayonnaise or dressings or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot, but well, not a lot actually. Like I can't even say that. I'm not one of these like hustle founders who's like, it was so hard. And if you're not like miserable and struggling, you're not doing it right. It's supposed to be this grind. Like we really like work hard, play hard. Like I would drive to Malibu, meet Mark for lunch at Coogie's. Like Pamela Anderson would be having lunch next to us. And then I would like surf on my way home. And then, but I did also like work out of my pajamas for an entire year until I had a team. And there was definitely like some stress points in there. But okay, so the taste thing for me with food like is number one. I think there are certain categories and certain food trends that you can get away with having bad taste. So like Quest Bar, like originally tasted terrible. And the founders themselves, who I was at dinner with a couple weeks ago, would tell you like, we're just selling to gym bros. All they care about is the macros and they don't care about taste. Like I think that is more like, is kind of like
niche.
CPG. Well, it's also like CPG 10 years ago. Like I don't think that works anymore, but it did. There were so few options that for a certain point in time, you only needed just like one selling point, and there were people who would buy it no matter how it tasted. And I think Quest really kind of like paved the way in that regard. Like he said, like no one cares. I mean, it tastes pretty good now, but back in the day, no one cares, but there's like 20 grams of protein, so it's fine.
And like where are you going to get something that's 20 grams of protein and
right.
it's like an Oreo cookie bar?
Right, exactly. But no, I think for us, it was like taste is like paramount. Like it's number one for sure. It has to taste good. You can't be like sacrificing. But no one had done like a seed oil free condiment. Everyone's talking about like seed oils now, but not that many people were talking about it when we launched in 2015. So you know, I mean, this is 9 years ago. We were the first people to ever put like an avocado oil into a condiment. And like every mayonnaise had sugar in it. We were like, what's with the sugar in the mayonnaise? Like, why do we need the sugar in the mayonnaise? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So just eliminating sugar and like sticking to the seed oil free like philosophy of ours, I think really kind of just catapulted the brand.
I love that you're so honest about not only like loving the taste, but honest about the days and what they look like. Meeting Mark for lunch, surfing on your way home, work-life balance. I think you're very efficient at the job that you do. You make decisions really quickly. Like I've seen you really trust your gut over the years. Like how has that been like beneficial to you in your career and in like guiding the company to growth and then eventually a sale?
I think making quick decisions is just like paramount in leadership. Like I don't know, I talk to a lot of organizations now and like new roles I'm doing, and I feel like people who can't, like the teams really struggle with just like having clarity, having direction and being able to move. And I would way rather make like a semi okay decision today than like a perfect decision in 2 weeks. So I think sometimes you just got to move and like figure it out.
Yeah.
That's like entrepreneur, especially in the early days. Like that's kind of just entrepreneurship like at its finest.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. People can get caught up in like packaging and labeling.
Or even business plans. Like we didn't have a business plan. We were like, we're going to figure out how much. The plan is like, let's see if we can sell this batch of mayonnaise.
Let's sell the stuff that's in the commerce.
And see what happens.
Commerce.
Yeah. And I think if we would have had a business plan, we probably honestly would have failed because we would have looked at the market and we launched a $10 jar of mayonnaise. In the market at the time, mayonnaise was like $2 for a 24-ounce jar of mayonnaise. We launched a 12-ounce jar of mayonnaise for $9.99 in 2015. And we launched that because I knew we needed at least 50% margins in order to stay in business. We never raised money. We didn't want to be like beholden to someone else in charge of our fate or our future. And we were like, look, this is what it costs to make the kind of mayonnaise we want. People either buy it and we have a business or they don't and we don't. And so let's see what the minimum run is and test that and put it in the world. And it worked. Like, but it was a risk. Like if we would have hired like a Harvard MBA to do a business plan for us, they would have been like, okay, here's the market. I think you can only justify like 2 times the market value price. I like the max you're going to be able to sell this mayonnaise for is $4.99. And we would have overanalyzed it. And it would have been like analysis paralysis. We would have launched with way too low of margins and it would have been a cluster. Like that's the truth. So,
well, you're like absolutely my unofficial advisor for Be Well by Kelly because I think I've followed in Primal Kitchen, your and Mark's footsteps in that self-funding, making decisions quickly, like not getting too many cooks in the kitchen, because you truly can say like, oh, well, let's go hire this big branding company and they're going to charge me $250,000 for a full rebrand and all my color palettes, Pantone and all this stuff. In reality, it's like not changing the consumer's experience and it just ate into like the money that you could use to make more of the product and reach more consumers. How do you feel now? I mean, now you're in a consulting role and we'll get to that, but in just like having a lean and mean team at Primal Kitchen, you hired friends, you used people's husbands to do branding and labels. Like, talk to me about like what your strategy is for growing a team or strategically keeping a team lean or strategically keeping your sales to say direct to consumer or an Amazon instead of going into say grocery or, you know, you've told me many times don't go into Whole Foods when you can be lean and mean online. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about keeping a team lean and keeping a business lean and why that's strategically like a good move.
Yeah, I think it like comes back to just like what your end goal is and being realistic about like whether or not that's achievable. So I talk to entrepreneurs every day, and I'll talk to a lot of people who are like, I have this great idea and I'm a doctor and I want to launch this product. I'm like, great. Do you want to be like a CEO and run a business that you can sell one day, or do you want a lifestyle business you can take money off the table every year? Like, what do you want to do here? And if they say like, oh, I'd love to sell a business one day, I'm like, great. Primal Kitchen was doing 50 million in revenue. How much EBITDA do you think we had, the bottom line? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know, 10 million, 5 million. And it's like, no, we had 2 million of EBITDA on 50 million in revenue, which means like 2 million of profit on 50 million in revenue. And we were incredibly scrappy. And like one of the only businesses, like one of the reasons Kraft bought us is because they were so impressed with our 2 million of EBITDA, because most companies they look at 50 million in revenue are losing money every year. So the food industry margins are really thin. Once you get retail involved, you have a distributor involved. There's a lot of like costs that come along with putting your product in retail. It's not like just, oh, I'm in the grocery store now and the money just flows. So I tell people like your first order to Whole Foods, you're going to get $100,000 order and they're going to pay you like $20,000 like 6 months later. So that's the reality. You're the bank. Everyone takes a cut. It's very expensive. There's a lot of spoilage. If you don't perform well, you get kicked out. You have to pay just to put your product on shelf. Like 1 case per store, free fill to get on shelf is normal. And that I think like people just need to know and go in with eyes wide open. Like it's going to take money to get your product off the shelf, but ultimately like what's your goal in the end of the day? And can you achieve it without the stress and pain of retail, and maybe go there when you've proven your concept online or something like that, I think. And I think if you're going to sell a company and you ask yourself the question, like, what's my end goal here? And you're going to sell the company one day, like, you need to make sure you have a differentiated product in a category that's big enough, with a product that's niche enough that meets a need that hasn't been met, or you need to go raise ungodly amounts of money and put it all into marketing and
advertise the heck out of it.
Hope that like
viral TikTok
which
video.
Some people do, right? Like that just wasn't our path. We were like scrappy. We ran a super scrappy business operation. I did hire all of my friends who still work at Primal today. Is like 9 years later. It's actually like kind of crazy. And it just wasn't like, that just was never going to be me. I was never like going to be the person. I think if you get in that like fundraising mindset, that like is your job.
Yeah.
Then your job is like really just to keep raising money, to keep the machine going. And we just never wanted to be on that treadmill. So
yeah. I think that scares me. Like to think that I wouldn't be able to take my profits and produce enough for the growth, natural growth that is occurring online, to then have to like literally be an entrepreneur that all they do is fundraise, and they're going for their next round and they're looking for strategic investors and they're giving away equity. And then all of a sudden they're not an entrepreneur, they're working for someone else. And that person's opinion has so much weight in the direction of where their business can go. Like I love the freedom of being an entrepreneur and saying like, I leveraged my down payment for my first house. It was very risky. Yes, it was. But like I believed in myself and the product. And yeah, I'm not like doing Quest protein or pick another protein Vega or something like that, but I'm not having to keep up with that treadmill. Like I have all part-time moms and my sisters both work for me. Like you've been integral in helping me like be really clear on what it is, because people can follow shiny coins. They're like, ooh, Whole Foods South, Southern California wants to carry my brand, and Thrive's reaching out. And the reality is like it cuts into margins, and then you're paying all these people and needing to be the bank for everyone. In reality, I'm a protein powder. There are so many protein powders out there. Like, how am I really differentiating myself? Like, it is niche in that it's minimal products and I feel comfortable drinking it pregnant and whatever, but I don't know necessarily that someone couldn't just go totally copycat me. So I'm gonna stay in my lane and just continue to do what I do. But I want to go back to what you said, like if they're standing out because they're niche, or they're standing out because they're in a new, maybe like a new segment in general, what are some brands that you think of that are like, oh, such a good brand, like totally industry disruptors, created a new industry, and you think like just the world of?
Oh God, that's such a good question. I mean, it's interesting. Our like cohort, if you will, in the paleo space, we've seen like, a lot of success come out of there. Like Siete, like crushed it, and they sold recently. for what was it? $1 billion, 800 million? I can't even remember.
No, billion.
A billion, yeah. Element
It was 1.2.
obviously is doing amazing. I
Crush.
think they hit like that trend at a really good time. I love that brand. Armra, I think what Armra is doing is interesting. I think they're kind of like maybe a little bit similar to like Vital Proteins, right? Like Vital Proteins, like Collagen. Kelly and I, we've actually talked about this. Like we were both buying Great Lakes Collagen
Yes.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And they're like 100-year-old company that's been making their own collagen
Old
with the worst
cardboard
branding,
tube.
marketing ever. And Vital Proteins came in and just like took the trend, made it sexy, grew it, sold it. And it's been a huge success for, I think, everyone involved.
Yeah.
And I see like maybe that's what's happening with colostrum. I'm not sure that like I'm buying fully into like all the benefits and claims of colostrum. I don't know. I'm like the verdict's still out there. But yeah, I think that's interesting. I think there's this company I just found recently, Renzo's, that makes like dissolvable kids supplements. So that you're not dealing with like the gummy thing. I'm
Or
like
the
excited
chewy
about
thing?
them, but they're
Okay.
very small. But it's like a neuroscientist founded business. So I'm like excited. I love like smaller businesses. Rise Coffee, if you know the mushroom
Yeah.
coffee company, Rise, they're like really crushing it. I like what
Yeah,
the
they're
Slate
coming up.
Milk guys are doing. I mean, there's so many. Gosh, I don't know.
Those are
There's a
some good
lot.
brands.
Yeah.
Those are some good
Oh,
brands.
you know who I love is Good Culture cottage cheese. Took
Pregnancy
like
craving number one.
totally. I mean, they like really like made cottage cheese sexy again.
Hooligan.
Yeah, and just talk about like a boring category that
I mean,
hasn't
I-
been disrupted.
Pink jar,
Yeah,
pink
it's
container
great.
Knudsen on my kitchen table. It was like iceberg salad, rice,
Oh,
rice-a-roni,
God.
chicken,
No, this-
steamed broccoli, and then my mom would just like throw the pink
the whole thing.
Costco-sized
Yeah.
Knudsen cottage cheese on the table, and that was
Yeah.
probably my favorite thing on my plate.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
Okay.
Yeah, those are just some brands that I think are doing well.
Okay, so well, I love all those brands. I think they're great. I know there's a little bit of heat happening for Element because
Yeah.
of the maltodextrin. Super interesting in the natural flavor space. I actually feel pretty bad for them because all you have to put on a label is not natural flavors, and you can literally turn around every single supplement, cereal, anything that is a powdered natural flavor needs a binder like that. And there's no requirement from the FDA to list out everything that's in your natural flavor, just like in the same way, like if you had a fragrance
Yep.
and a deodorant or a candle, you don't have to list it.
Because it's technically proprietary. So
Right.
the flavor houses and the fragrance houses have like proprietary.
So
yeah.
can you explain that? Because I feel like they're taking the brunt of this one, but I just,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like we've seen this a lot. I think like the pendulum swinging, right? Like when we launched Primal Kitchen, people were walking around barefoot at Paleo FX. Even myself, my own health journey was like, yeah, I'm sure you're the same. Like how crazy strict were you at one point in your life?
Well,
Like I was
prior
crazy.
to kids, and like when
prior to kids,
Chris
you're-
and I were like just getting married. I was like going to yoga, hot yoga. I was going to Soul Cycle. I was trying all the workouts. I lived behind the Whole Foods. I had like the juice bars and the smoothie bars. Like that was the birth of the Fab Four smoothie because
Yeah.
I was like, wait a second, these macros are so wrong.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing Mark and Vibram Five Finger Shoes at Chris Kresser's book signing in like
I know.
2013 maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
But yeah, everyone was real. Like the trends at that time were very like, it was just like, as long as it was paleo, keto, or Whole 30. I mean, it really was paleo and Whole 30 first, right? And then keto kind of came next. But people cared a lot more. I feel like if you look at like Google Trends, like keto, Whole 30, and paleo have all kind of like fallen off a cliff.
Yeah. No, it's back to
essentially.
like the early 90s of like macros.
Everything's back to the early 90s. This is
Yeah.
what I keep saying. I'm like, whatever
Your
the
outfits,
football
the
team was
clothes.
doing in high school is what my mom friends are doing now. Creatine, whey protein. Yes, it's
Lifting
amino
weights.
acids,
Yeah.
lifting weights. It
But
is like,
BCAAs are now essential amino acids.
yes, great. Exactly. But like that is the truth. I like keep
I know.
making this joke that I'm like the 90s is back like in fashion and nutrition and whatever. Like whatever the football team was doing when we were in high school is like great. Like you're
Oh my
good.
gosh.
Yeah, it's
Where's
so
Gwen
true.
Stefani when we need her?
It's so true. It's crazy. So I think, okay, so I can explain a little bit on this like natural flavors thing. So yes, I personally, like when we launched Primal, Mark was like, maltodextrin, it's fine. He's like, it's benign. It's in there in such a small amount. Like Mark is a science, like Mark Sisson is who we're talking about. For those listening who don't know, he's like the big paleo guy and considered kind of the OG of the paleo movement.
Blueprint.
Yes. Yes. MarksDailyApple.com. But anyway, he was like, had no problem with any of this stuff. He's like, it's in here in the most tiny amount. And Mark's whole kind of life philosophy is like, move well, like
Sleep
love well,
well.
live well, sleep well, and eat well. But that doesn't mean like your whole life revolves around eating 100% perfect diet to the point where it's almost like a problem, right?
Right.
Like that's just not Mark. He's a very like, he like hates the Aura ring. He's just like a purist. He's like, he's primal in all essence of the word. And I was the one who was like, no, we are not putting maltodextrin in anything. Like, no, we can't formulate with that because it has an X in it and people don't like an ingredient derived from corn. And we don't have time to educate people on how many parts per million, because that's kind of what we're talking about in a lot of these formulations are in these products.
You're not even putting it on the nutrition facts a lot of the time.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I was much more like psychotic about eliminating those things. Natural flavors is another one where I think there might be some problem, natural flavors, but really probably like 98% of them are probably fine.
Yeah.
I eat them, I feed them to my kids, and I don't have a huge problem with it.
Yeah.
But I also am just in a phase of life where like my number one priority isn't like perfecting what I'm putting in my body. Like I'm choosing to focus on like trying to be more of a balanced and not such a psycho mom. So I think that's just where it's at. So, but yes, the reality is when you go to formulate something and your number one priority is you want it to taste good, like you oftentimes might need the assistance of a natural flavor. And I'm formulating a new product. I'm including natural flavors. I'm using an organic supplier of natural flavors, so it will be organic natural flavors on the label. I will not sneak any other ingredients in with that.
But it's liquid, so you don't need a binder.
That's true. I don't need a binder, so there will be no
maltodextrin.
But I also like will not probably be able to answer what is the natural flavors, because the reality is like there's huge flavor houses. A lot of them are in Europe and they make the blends and the essences. A lot of it comes from like fruit essences. It's not like
it's not like a rubber tire is making watermelon flavor. It's coming from watermelon rind.
Like we've kind of like lost the plot a little bit. Like we're picking on Element, but like people are drinking Coca-Cola with 40 grams of sugar in it. Like I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, like we're majoring in the minors. Like why are we majoring in the minors? Like let's focus on getting like the basics right and not like tear apart these like entrepreneurial smaller organizations who are by and large changing the industry and doing the right thing for, 90% of the time.
Pulling out sugar from electrolyte companies, and we're not having Gatorade massive spikes and crashes and things like that. Yeah.
I don't want to see any more trench coats in the grocery store. Like I just don't. I'm kind of over it.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like looking at entrepreneurial brands and looking at brands to invest in, we have been lucky enough to be a part of Wild Ventures, which has given us opportunities to invest in brands. I am an investor in Element. I am an investor in Serenity Kids. I'm an investor in Hyatt Vitamin. Like the list, goes on of the brands that I felt like, wow, you're an industry disruptor. No gummy vitamins, you're chewable. Great, let's take it. Serenity Kids, it's like a Fab 4 pouch for babies versus like all of the fruit only pouches, like the sugar-free electrolytes and Element. Great, let's do this. Like, when you go, so now not only have we invested in brands, similar brands together, you're now consulting for a venture capital company and for Heinz and coming out with your own brand. When you start to look at these entrepreneurial decks, like what are you looking for? What's an immediate like, no, that's not going to work. This is a bad business idea. Like what has come across your desk where you're like, oh, I wish they didn't spend so much time or money in building this brand if they only knew.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like such a good question. So I'm looking at things from like a few different lenses. So myself personally is like very different. I'm consulting for a huge private equity fund called Summit. They have a $9.5 billion fund. So they're trying to write checks with a minimum of $100 million. And their main focus is profitable companies, 10 million of EBITDA, where they love like a founder who runs a profitable company and wants to sell a majority percent of the company and take all of it in secondary, which means when you raise money, a lot of people don't know this, but you can take money off the table for yourself, or they will make you the private equity fund, or you will need to put money on the balance sheet of the company in order to grow the company. So there's like growth equity you can raise, or you can do like a round where you're pulling money off the table in secondary. Summit loves to like provide entrepreneurs a chance to pull money off the table in secondary. They're normally running super profitable businesses that don't need money on the balance sheet, and they're going for like large exits with bigger, more mature companies. So that's like a different lens, I would say. For that, it's like, is the total addressable market big enough? Like you don't want to be investing in a company that's in a niche market that's, maybe a $1 billion category versus like soda's a $20 billion category, for instance. Mayonnaise is a $2 billion category, ketchup's one. It's kind of like interesting, but condiments as a whole is a big opportunity, right? So like, how are you navigating the overall category? Is the size big enough? I'm like a big believer right now in just like a few certain macro trends that I don't think are going anywhere.
Yeah.
We've talked about protein. Like I don't see protein, like there's too much, I don't think there's any macronutrient that's as studied as protein is. So I'm like so bullish on protein. I'm so bullish on GLP-1 medications. I think it's like insane. I've been talking about it for like 3 years. Before anyone was talking about it, I was telling Kraft Heinz president, like, are you paying attention? Like, this is coming for you like a freight train. And they're like, no, only like rich people are taking
Only
that.
Celebrities are taking
and
that.
I was like, no, you are smoking your own crack. Like, this is going to railroad your business. And like, there was just a report last week, I think that was like grocery sales are down 6% because people are just eating less because so many people. I even saw an article that resale clothing shops are having a problem with like triple XL, quadruple XL, XL clothes not moving because all these people are losing weight, donating all their big clothes, and there's no one to take the big clothes from the people who donated the clothes because like I just think I could like talk all day about how I think Ozempic and GLP-1 medications are going to impact. I think it's the most amazing. I'm not on it. I would totally microdose it. I'm here for all of it. But I just think it's the most amazing like medical advancement that we'll probably see in our lifetime. Like I think the 55 million Americans on statins will like slowly shift over and be on GLP-1 medication. But anyway, so I'm very bullish on that.
It seems to be a lot more efficacious than any of the statins are. So
exactly. Like we have 55 million Americans.
Metabolic health.
Totally. And we're not, heart disease isn't coming down. Like maybe your cholesterol is, but heart disease isn't. So what are we doing here? So I think it's a great metabolic solution for some of that we're going to see. So, but just that impact and how that trickles down through the food industry is like very fascinating to me, and like how habits are shifting and like the impact on just like addiction and food or drink you might have, like alcohol consumption is going down for folks who are on Ozempic. Even like coffee is impacted and just different things like that I'm fascinated with. But I don't think like sugar is going to make a comeback. I don't think in like 20 years people are going to be like adding sugar to things again.
Actually, we were wrong.
Right. Like
it doesn't cause type 2 diabetes.
So I just am a big believer in like betting on some of these just macro trends that I don't see going away. Like we didn't launch a paleo company. We launched like a low sugar, unsweetened, clean oil company, right? And we just took that like philosophy and applied it to mayonnaise first. And then we were like, what other category has a ton of oil in it that hasn't been cleaned up? Oh, salad dressings. They also have sugar and canola oil in every single salad dressing on the shelf. Okay, ketchups, tons of sugar, like Whole Foods asked us to do an unsweetened ketchup. We launched that 6 months later. And none of that ever felt like risky to me because as long as you can make it taste good, like those trends aren't going anywhere. So that's what I'm bullish on.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot through our investing journey and just like the brands that I've supported. Like I was really sad to see Wild Friends close their doors, but when you look at like what I've learned too is you think about something like an Element, like a packet, like a very light packet, shipping that across the country or to a different country. The cost of that versus like shipping large jars of nut butter, which, consumers can buy on the shelf without having to pay for shipping. And then also things like shipping water or sodas or sparkling waters, like where shelf space matters because you're not shipping it, or even like thinking about when I was, coming out with the protein and we were talking a little bit about line extensions, we were talking about bars, like just protein bars in general, just thinking about like expiration dating and like what would I do if I was like going to come up against an expiration date? There have been like some safe moves for the business because of our conversations just around like, I do feel safe investing, let's say like a couple $100,000 into a production run, knowing that I have 2 years to sell it. Not 6 weeks or 3 months.
It's also like significantly easier to make powder than it is to make a bar. Like I would know we had like a discontinued line of bars, of collagen bars at Primal Kitchen.
They were soft at first and then all of a sudden they were breaking teeth.
We sold out 50,000 bars in like 2 days and then like a few complaints started coming in about like people like I broke my tooth or like my crown came out. We ran a promo code like dentures. Like I shit you not. Like you could never get away with this under like corporate leadership. But we ran like that promo code, sold out our second run, and they were like, we just had consistency.
I ate them hard.
I ate them. I mean, they were good. There's like 3 grams of sugar.
Dip them in some hot water.
Olive
make
oil.
them
Yeah, heat them up in the microwave. I know. Yeah. But I think also category-wise, like you got to be like, to me, like nut butter is a commodity.
Right.
Like it's just, that's like hard to stand out. I mean, Justin's had a nice exit, but then it's like what strategic is like the big food companies, the Kraft Heinz, Frito-Lay's, General Mills of the world. Like who really feels like they need a nut butter in their portfolio enough to pay 3 to 5 times revenue multiple to buy another nut butter company? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That just seems like they can copy your commoditized nut butter like pretty easy. I like to go after categories that like the big companies can't do well. So like I like to be in a place like Kraft Heinz's number one account's Walmart and Primal's number one account's Whole Foods. And Kraft Heinz has never called on anyone at Whole Foods. Like they would call us and be like, can you guys intro us to someone? They like carry our organic Heinz and we've like never talked to anyone there. And we would be like, can you help us with Walmart? Because we have no idea how to navigate the world's largest grocery store. And like, we need help. So I think it's nice when you're in an area, like if you know who you want to sell to, like the more like serious you can be about who do I want to sell to and what decision do I make working back from that like I just have a lot of philosophies around that. Like leaving the white space. You don't want to, sometimes things are worth more in a PowerPoint deck than they are in execution, because if you go to Walmart and fail, you're going to have a hard time selling your company in the next 3 to 5 years. Like when we sold Primal, we had never done $1 through the register at Costco, Walmart, or Target. So we had so much distribution white space, which is like the easiest growth.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do how do their analysts not put together a case to triple our business? Like, it's a no-brainer. We have so much distribution white space. But if you go everywhere and you don't build the brand right, you have the risk of failing, you get kicked off shelf, it's hard to get back in. You leave no distribution white space. If you innovate into every category that your brand could possibly go, you have no innovation white space. Like you're selling an opportunity for someone else to grow your business. So like, how do you preserve that white space while maximizing your value where you are to like maximize your exit? That's kind of like that's the puzzle I like to figure out. I think that's fun.
Finding the sweet spot of like, look at how big we grew in such a short period of time. Look at how loyal our customers
are. Selling the story of how big we could be.
We're not even Costco. We're not in Target. We're not in Walmart. It's funny because I've always been a huge Primal Kitchen fan, and like clearly everyone watching is going to know why, because we like basically did the bump to bump photo with Riker and Sebastian, and like you played soccer, I played. I just feel like
we both read romance novels. We both have stay-at-home dads. We're like the same person.
We just like mom of 3 boys. Like there are so many similarities, and I just freaking loved you from the minute I met you. I just like, she's a hustler. She's gritty. She's fun. She's like, yes,
so sweet.
Always loved you. But I've always loved Primal Kitchen because I knew the team behind it. I knew it was you and like your bridesmaids and Mark and like just really good people trying to put out a really good product and working hard to do it. And when you guys were purchased by Heinz, I had so many DMs from people being like, oh, like I'm not going to buy it anymore. And I was so confused because I was like, wait a second. Like you guys don't even, when a small brand is purchased by a big brand, but they get to keep their ethos and keep their products clean, they're leveraging legal, they're leveraging HR, they're
QA, quality assurance,
like
marketing.
Tell me about it, because I think people get like,
no, there's like such a fear.
And like Siete got purchased and people are like, I'm never buying Siete again.
Yeah,
like
I know.
But isn't this lowering the cost of goods for everyone across the nation to make health more accessible?
Yeah, and also like the other reality, and I talked about this on a different podcast, and like some people were pissed, but such is life. But I just think the reality is like people don't understand like the rough nature of running a small business. So they're just like so offended that you could sell out, but the reality is like it's really, we would maybe not be in business today if we hadn't sold to Kraft Heinz, because we sold in 2019, like COVID hadn't happened. There was like, we had over $20 million of cost inflation on our business a couple of years ago. Just when prices of everything went up. How do you ride that as a small business? You don't have the capital to do it. Like having the support of a huge conglomerate who can basically, I mean, we got rid of our we ran the company on a line of credit that Mark had a personal guarantee on.
I remember like on his house or something.
He had a personal guarantee, which means if we didn't pay our line of credit, they could take Mark's house. And our line of credit was up to $9 million at one point in time. So, you know, when we were at 50 million, it was 9 million in revenue. That we were profitable, but you need the cash to run the business, right? So when we sold, we got rid of that bank relationship and bank loan, and Kraft Heinz became the bank. And if we needed money to fund inventory to grow the business, Kraft Heinz, I signed a thing and the money came over the next day and our life became significantly easier. So also, like, we never would have they have a choice, right? Every corporation does. How much marketing dollars do you have and what brands are those marketing dollars going to? And like, they have been nothing but exorbitantly like supportive of Primal Kitchen. Like at one point I was like, can you please take away some of these marketing dollars because I can't make this business any more profitable and I would rather grow slower and work on the bottom line than spend all of this money
frivolously
and try to outpace that with other like changes we need to make to the P&L to make the business work. And they were like, no, we want to like invest the dollars in growing Primal. Like you have to spend it. Like, so they like really, they love Primal Kitchen internally. They have fired not one single person. They have they put pressure on us in ways that like a corporation puts pressure on an organization to grow, to improve the bottom line, all those things. Yes. But like, there's never been a person who's been like, all right, so I think it's time to add the canola oil to the Primal Kitchen mayonnaise. Like, it just hasn't happened. Like, they're not interested in they get it. Like, they bought us and paid a premium for us. They paid $200 million for a $50 million business. And they didn't do that to ruin the products. Like, they're, you know,
they're not going to like lose all those customers.
No. So I think, I think that's just hard for a lot of people. Like, we want to have this like reductionist mindset that like big is bad and small is good. And the reality is just like it exists like somewhere in the middle there. And I get it. We were worried about the same thing at KeVita. I remember the Stonyfield Farms founder, when he sold out, people were like up in arms. And he was like, look, I can't afford to get my product into the hands of every American, but like a large company can. So like, how about instead of being elitist that only like people who can afford to spend.
Erewhon only.
Yeah, Erewhon only. How about we like try to make this available for everyone? So, they put a lot of money, like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but $95 million CapEx into building out our own line for Primal Kitchen internally at a Kraft facility. So we have like a whole facility that they built just for us to be able to like run our products the way we want. And they've been just nothing but super supportive. And my whole team is still there. So yeah, I don't know that that's always the case, right? Like certainly we sold the company 6 years ago. Is today January 3rd? No, 6th? No. Okay. Yeah. January 3rd, 6th. So 6 years ago, almost to the day we sold Primal Kitchen to Kraft. And like every single person pretty much besides a few salespeople are still in like a senior leader. My senior leadership team is still there running the company. So
that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Like, and in big business, big corporation, it isn't for everyone. It is, clearly you've made your way out and I want to talk about like what's next for you. But to have, to think about, I mean, like even thinking about some of your team members that are maybe like the breadwinner in their family and to have like a 401k and like a nice paycheck that is, able to grow because you have a big corporation behind you and great health benefits and all the things. Like, I don't think people understand the stomach it takes to be an entrepreneur, to leverage your own capital, to put your, personal guarantee, put your house on the line for a business that you believe in for other people. Like, yes, you want to be profitable and grow a brand, but I think it's a beautiful story what you and Mark were able to do with Primal Kitchen. And I think that's the goal for so many brands. I do feel bad when I see sort of my version of red flags. And I only know this now being that I have my own products and have invested in certain brands and seen some of my favorite brands have to like close their doors where you think like, oh, they're profitable, they're doing great. But all these shelf space contracts matter. Like if you're being taken off the shelves at Sprouts across the nation, that's a gut punch, and that could be a big problem where you
can't recover from it.
You can't. Yeah. Like, you're failing bankruptcy and you're starting over and like going and getting a job somewhere. Yeah. Like there's a lot, and like people can point fingers, but nobody has the stomach to do it themselves. Yeah, which is like
for sure. I mean, when we sold Primal, Mark had like no money. He was like personal guarantee, house rich, no cash. Like he had a failing restaurant business. He was so stressed. Like he's bleeding money in the restaurant business. He was like, I think I need to take like it was bad, So it was like it came at like the perfect time for Mark to just you know, I mean, he's 70 now and like,
He deserved
he
it.
deserved it. He's been an entrepreneur his whole life. And
Such good juju from
yeah.
Mark Sisson.
Yeah.
Such a
great.
good dude.
And Mark and I owned 95% of the company when we sold. So we did like a small friends and family round. Did you invest? I can't remember.
No, it was before my time.
It was before you were involved
Yeah,
with John.
I think that was one of the first ones that John did.
Yeah, it was.
That and Thrive Market. I missed out on both of those.
Yeah,
but
I had a
you
chance
both.
to invest in Thrive and I didn't do it, which I know. How crazy is that?
I have those moments
Yeah.
where that was like Beekeeper's Naturals. I'm like, it's honey. It's blood sugar. It's going to spike.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm like, all the benefits there. And I'm
know.
like giving my kids
Me too. Manuka honey like every day.
They're like
Yeah.
vitamin D suckers.
I know.
And like they're super
Yeah.
honey with the bee pollen and the
I
royal
know.
jelly. Like,
I know. I bought 2% of Primal Kitchen for $60K instead of investing in Thrive Market. So it worked out for me, but
yeah, I think it did.
It worked out. But yeah, but we bonused every single employee who worked for us. Like we led the sale of the company like in secret. You don't want to like tell your employees and make them nervous they're going to get like fired on day one, which of course no one did. We had like retention bonuses for all of our employees. And we literally bonused every single person who worked for us down to like forklift drivers in the warehouse. And some bonuses were like exorbitant, like life-changing amount of money. So Mark and I had like our day. I had a 6-day-old baby and we called it got leaked to the press. The sale of Primal Kitchen got leaked. And so we thought we had more time to tell everyone than we did. And then they ran like a Chicago Tribune article that was like Kraft Heinz set to buy Primal Kitchen. And we were like, shit. So we had to call everyone like that morning and tell them like, hey, we sold and also you're getting a huge life-changing bonus. People were like, everyone was crying. Mark was crying. I was crying. We'd like divvy up the employee list. We were all sobbing. Like it was a cool.
Special moment.
Yeah, it was my favorite moment of being an entrepreneur for sure.
So cool.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, like once you get the taste of that, are you like, how do I get back out there and do this again?
I have been feeling that for a while, but I haven't really had like a hell yes yet, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of like, how do I do that again? But also like a lot of pressure. Like, do I even have to do this again? Like, or do I just want to be a stay-at-home mom? You know, like, what am I? It's like the dichotomy of it all. But yeah, so I moved into like an advisory role with Primal after 5 years. And then I'm consulting for a really cool, huge private equity fund called Summit. And that's been super fun. So trying to find businesses for them to invest in. And then ideally I could take a role at one of those businesses. And then I have like a passion project I'm working on the side in the actual worst category in the grocery store, which is beverage. But
why is it the worst category?
Oh, it's so expensive. It's so competitive. You have to deal with like the distribution networks, like infinitely more complex. You're dealing with like, it's just really hard. Right. But at least I know that going in, which maybe makes it worse. I don't know. But yeah, I'm working on like a sparkling water with protein in it. So it's imagine like a Spindrift or a Poppy with 12 grams of protein.
Yes,
flavors
you are.
like orange,
First
lemon, lime, grapefruit.
Family and friends investor right here.
I know. I got to get it together. But yeah, so.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that because it is a industry disruptor. It's not a milky protein shake. It's not a sparkling water. Like it is easy to drink, not filling, but protein loaded.
Totally. Yeah.
What has it been like, the process of formulating and like meeting people? I think you're also another really one of the things I love about you is you're like a massive connector and you're very curious. Like you said earlier, you know, when you're asking like, take note or what did you say? Like you're the one who's going to take pen or.
Oh yeah. To take pen. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like I think you're really good at just being honest about where your knowledge set is and then asking people and finding the right people that can give you the answers and you learn fast. So what's been the process of formulating the sparkling protein beverage?
I found it's funny. Like I think we have this like, you can have like two different mindsets, right? One can be like I'm trying to focus more on my like abundance mindset, but I feel like if you keep everything like so close to the vest and you're not like I'm out there with everything, like there's pretty much no boundaries, right? You know this about me. So, but actually like I'm like leaning in on that. I feel like it serves you well because like, so I just started telling people like, this is what I'm doing. Here's my idea. Like someone could copy it, right? I don't care. But what happened is then someone's like, oh, you got to talk to my friend. She's like the queen of the beverage industry. And then she's like, here's someone who can do your formulation for free. They're a huge flavor house, yada, yada. And if I would have just like held my idea close and been like, I don't want to tell anyone because I'm paranoid and I'm worried someone's going to steal my idea and do it better than me before me, I would have missed out on all these ways that like exponentially sped up the process of getting a product to market. But anyway, I have hired an R&D firm and had done some work over the summer with a different R&D firm. I came up with the name myself. It's called Waay with 2 A's, so Waay. And I'm working on branding
Way
with
cool.
just like, yeah, thanks. With it's like not an agency because I hate agencies. So with someone I know who does graphic design really well, and they're like doing a project for me, just like me working one-on-one with someone, which is like a big, so it's very scrappy. I'm funding it all myself. We'll probably raise money in like 6 months because it's just beverage. You need a lot more money. Yes, and Kelly,
I won't be able to be like a large strategic.
We'll take anything. We just need the support.
A couple cases to my garage would be great.
Yeah, but it's a lot of like self-doubt and like, should I really do this? And then it's like, no, you got to do this. Mark's like, okay, you just keep on going, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's it. And you know what?
Do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what my thing is too is I have realized that you have to speak things into existence for them, for you to keep pace with your own goals. Like one of the strategic things that I do when it comes to like having a goal, like when I was filming my courses, for example, I called and booked the videographer and I had the dates on the calendar before I even had anything scripted.
Yeah.
Before I like had my like chapters ready, I knew exactly what I was going to say. And I was like, well, they're coming to my house in 3.5 weeks.
Gotta
so
get it done.
I went to my parents' house. Chris watched the kids. I locked myself in my dad's office and I was there like 8-9 hours a day, cleared my calendar. And I was like, this is the goal. And I already have the thing on the calendar, so I have to do it. And the same goes for like my first book. I remember being at a New Year's party with like a bunch of friends in Cabo. We basically like rented a house with like all the couples after it was like first couple years after getting married. And they're like, what's your New Year's resolution? I'm like, I'm going to write a book this year. And they were all like, okay.
Yeah.
And it was like 18 months later that I got the book deal. But I really do think when you tell your friends things or you like have people in your corner, not only are you like telling them and making it real, but you're also like relying on them for like advice or like getting, you don't want too many voices or like lights on the path or you'll be blinded. You want a few to light your way, but like it does really make a difference for me personally and how I kind of, you're like market testing. Like, what do people think about this? Also like, who can you introduce me to?
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I said it. Now I got to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So you go.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So talk to me a little bit about like the opposite, not like the big business consultant. Because you are like a powerhouse boss. Like I've always been super impressed with your ability to like just make things happen and make decisions and like put a team together and like go. You just joked about it, like being a stay-at-home mom. Like, how are you balancing that juggle with your boys? Like, what are you loving? What are you leaning into? How are you feeling like like, do you have guilt?
Yes.
Like,
oh my God. Okay. So one thing I just like, everyone asks this, like, how do you balance? And I'm like,
there's no balance.
Balancing anything. Like, there is literally no balance. I mean,
it's like blood sugar. It's up and down.
Yeah,
your body's trying its best.
Yeah. And even just like, my kids are 2, 4, and 6. Aren't yours like what, 1, 4, and 6?
18 months, 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just like, maybe I am like I'm in the toddler emotional phase of life myself. Even like everything is just like 1 minute you're like, oh my God, they're amazing. And then the next minute you're like, oh my God, if I can't get a nanny for like 4 hours and get away and have some of my own time, I'm going to explode. And then you're with them and you're like, I need some space. And then you're away from them and you're like, I feel guilty. And it's just like a thing. I will say, so there's no balance. I mean, it's just like, I don't know, you just keep going and you like have to just embrace like the phase you're in and know that like at this phase of life, it's just like really short-lived and this too shall pass.
Yeah.
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 And enjoying it. But you know what I struggle with is like so many people are like, oh, enjoy it. Like it's almost like this phase of life is extra hard because everybody puts this pressure on that like you never get it back. It's like the days go by so fast, but the years are short. So there's this like mom layer on top of everything of like, oh my God, am I enjoying it enough? Is that like this idea that like parenting ends when they're 10 and they're never going to want to talk to us again? I saw like Janet Lansbury like posted the other day and she's like, for anyone who's making you feel guilty that like or feel like this is it, like young children only want you now and you're like done with them like later.
Yeah.
She's like, I have the best relationship I've ever had with my adult kids and like I love it just as much as I did when they were little. So like don't worry. And Mark would tell me the same thing to me. He has 2 kids and he says like, I remember when Riker was little, he's like, it just gets better every year. Like it's amazing and then it gets more amazing and more amazing. And his kids are grown. He's a grandpa and he's like loving, you know, his relationship with his kids. So I think even just that like helps more than that other mindset.
Well, whenever there's pressure and a timeline to like perform and for it to be perfect, like that's putting perfectionistic tendencies on all parents with young toddlers. Like, oh gosh, I have to make this perfect, or it's
or
not
else
going to
they're
be
screwed up for life.
Yeah, it's not going to be good, or like, you know, if you have a blow up and you're like, oh, what are you doing? And there's like food all over your walls or whatever the case may be. That like all of a sudden we're like, it's micro traumas, and there's like all these layers of like. Yeah, like maybe we're not doing it right or it's not doing it perfect. And I think if you take that pressure away and you're like, how do I have fun?
Yeah.
I think putting myself in a position to like have fun with them and to realize like I'm not going to be that good at juggling. Like if it's a crazy work day or I'm having a sale or I have a client or I have to meet a deadline, like I may be home physically present, but like I can't be so hard on myself that I have like 15 tabs open in my brain. And to try and say that like 10 minutes like reading books or a half hour playing trucks is like enough, and I have to like release the guilt. Like that's my 2025 thing. Like I'm not going to say that I'm stressed anymore because it like came out of COVID maybe, or maybe it came out of like the first early couple runs of the protein or like product company product issues. Like our words have so much weight.
Yeah.
And like I'm stressed or I'm not doing a good enough job or I feel guilty. Like I'm asking if you feel guilty. Like I don't even want to say that anymore because I don't think we need to feel that way. Like we're working so hard for our families and we love our boys so much and there's so many layers. Like just like lean into having fun. Like that's kind of my thing right now. Like,
I agree. It's hard though.
Yeah.
I read this romance novel recently and the woman was like, it was British. It was set in the UK, right? So she was like British nanny. Yeah. And she's like, well, when I'm done processing the kids, and she always referred to like, we have to process the kids. And I was like, oh my God, I've never heard a better word for parenting in my life. Like that's what it feels like when if you only see your kids before and after school, it's like, you're just processing the kids. You're processing them through breakfast and through getting dressed and out the door. Then you're processing them for bed in the evening. And it's kind of like a little depressing. So I like really enjoyed just like we were sick over break and it was amazing. Like we were just home and we didn't do any processing and it was great to not have to be anywhere. Yeah. So I feel like I'm trying to like book more trips because then I'm really like, it's really great. So we're going skiing and then we're going to Mexico for 10 days and then we go to Wisconsin for the whole summer. And I'm just like, I know I need like those breaks for like the family. So I'm putting my money there and that's what I'm doing this year.
This is why we're just like kindred spirits. Are you doing this like this is all we did. We're driving home from Mammoth from Christmas and I was like, okay. I love Jesse Itzler and the big ass calendar. Totally. His whole mentality of like looking at your calendar and being like, if you don't plan for this, it doesn't happen. And like last year we took that big trip to France and we were gone for like almost a month. And there's just something about being someone who is a fast-paced working entrepreneur and puts a lot of things on their calendar and then like feels bad and tries to like schedule time. I just like started scheduling time with my boys, like one-on-one or special, we call it special time. And it's like every Thursday I have Toshin for at least 3 hours. Yeah. But it's like, we'll go to a museum. I'll take him to lunch. We'll go to the beach. Like we'll bring our scooters. And it's stuff that I like to do too. I'm not just taking him to like,
check a box.
Yeah, like Chuck E. Cheese or something where I'm like, this place is giving me, you know, but it's a mindset where I'm actually, when I do go on vacation, I like just take it down a notch and it's like the out of office is up and it's such high touch, high quality time that you just don't feel guilty. You're not like in 2 places at the same time. And there's not, I mean, I'm meditating, I'm doing yoga, like I'm seeing my girlfriends. There's not enough. I don't know how much more of that I can do to not think about work. Like it's just part of who I am right now. Yeah. You know? And so I can't feel bad about it and vacation's where it's at. Yeah. Or at least like time away.
I saw this Martha Stewart interview and someone was like, oh, so do you ever have like imposter syndrome? And she was like, no. Like, why do we even know? I don't even know what that word means. She's like, God, no, I just like, and I was like, I need more Martha Stewart energy in the new. Like, she is not a woman who is sitting around analyzing how good or bad she is at life. She's like, no, I got divorced and I like love being alone. And she's just like, she's so unapologetic. She's like, imposter syndrome. Pfft. She was like, what even is that? Like, who even talks about that? Like, she was so dismissive about it. And I was like, oh God, I need more Martha Stewart energy in
It's
2025.
coming. It's coming your way.
That's what I'm kind of liking. Yeah.
It's coming your way.
Yeah, exactly.
So 2025 manifestations, like growing this business, consulting for, I keep calling it a fund. It's venture capital fund.
It's a P fund.
Okay.
VCs like gets in really early stage, so they're at like small checks at super small companies.
Okay.
Then there's like growth equity and private equity.
Okay.
They're
So
more
it's
like
a
later
PE.
stage, more
Okay.
for anyone who cares. But
no, this
who
is,
cares?
I mean, this is
Yeah.
why I'm asking. Because everyone's like, oh, it's a VC. it's a
VC's
private-
like 100. They'll write like 100 checks, and they know like 70 of them will probably never return, but the 30 that do hopefully are good, or
Are
it might even
big,
be like
'cause they get in
90,
early,
10.
like, seed
They get in super
rounds?
early, so it's super risky.
Pre-seed,
Like yeah,
seed. Okay.
totally.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway.
And will you raise with a VC for Waay?
I actually met a woman on TikTok who I've been talking to pretty seriously in
Okay.
the VC space, but I have like a short list of people who I think would want to invest, who know the industry really well. There is one VC in the running, maybe two. There's another VC that like I know personally. But
Okay.
yeah, like people who are mentors and friends of mine in the industry who want to come in before their fund would be, like it's too small. Like a lot of growth equity wouldn't want to invest until you're doing 10, 20 million in revenue. So
Okay.
it's like finding the right person at the right stage of the business, but just need a little like $1.5 million, 2 million seed money to get the concept off the ground and prove that people actually want it and it tastes good and go from there.
And then
So
you
that's the
just
plan.
need like a girl in a pink suit to do some TikTok videos for you or something.
Yeah, that could be me. This is what I'm going to put in
So you do.
2025, a pink suit. Do you have one for me? Can you get me a pink suit?
No, I feel like you're giving me like blue vibes or like
I'm
beachy
not really a
vibes.
pink suit girl,
Yeah.
but we could see. I know. I
mean-
like wonder about that often though. Do you ever feel like this? Like I feel like Adam's always like TNA on social media. It's just TNA. Like you got it. Like
Yeah.
I feel like, can you be successful in a personal brand without being like this poster child, bikini clad, super sexualized female? Like Sarah Blakely does a really good job.
Yeah, she does do a really good job. She does do a really good job. I bet you she has I mean, I look at my social media, I'm 90% males following me.
Stop
or
it.
sorry,
No, I was like,
Absolute
wait,
opposite.
what? No.
I have 90% women
Yeah,
following
yeah.
me and 10% males.
Okay.
And they're between the ages of, like a couple years ago, it was like 25 to 45. And
Yeah.
they're probably just like our age, my age, somewhere around there. Like you're like, okay, just getting married, like trying to get fit for my wedding,
Totally.
young family, how do I feed my kids, menopause, perimenopause. Okay, like that's my gamut, and it's women. Like TNA, you might not even be, for you, for Waay, it would blow up. It's great, sure. But like for me, I think I can
can't
count.
do TNA.
I'm
This
like-
is not me. I'm like a
like,
soccer
let-
playing girl from the Midwest.
I've been in a bathing suit on my Instagram like probably less than 6 times.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I'm married. I
I
have
know.
little kids.
I know. I'm with you, but
I went to
sometimes I just
Catholic
look around. I'm like,
school.
what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like and there are like, I mean, there are brands that have just like completely popped off and blown up, and it's more of like a model-esque type
Yeah, the
of,
model-esque thing. Yeah.
you know, putting on their outfit from their chonies and or just like wearing their bathing suit and like wrapping their sarong
Yeah.
and doing their sunglasses. Like that's not for my brand. Like one of the filters that I've been thinking about, because the things that also went viral last year were like fearmongery. So it's like TNA or it's like fearmongery. It's like, oh my
Right.
God, what's in this? This is going to kill you. This is going to give you cancer.
Yeah.
Don't pick this up off the
It's
shelf.
like clickbait.
And I'm like, whew. Like that is like, I am in grandma mode. I'm like your grandma. I'm like, did you eat something today?
Yeah.
You just got to eat something. Honey.
Yeah.
Like we just need to go back to the basics. Like I know why Mark is the way he was at the end there. Cause it's just like, hey, like we just need to sleep and like have good relationships and like not doom scroll.
Yeah.
And then we'll feel good. So one of the things that I did have a video where I was like discussing seed oils, and it kind of went viral, and then it was like mishmashed for people and reshared, and I was like, wow, that like got a lot of views, just really kind of went viral. But if it's going viral for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
if it's going viral because it feels scary or fearmongery, like after that happened, I went into Google Docs, and I don't use Slack. I don't use all these other.
I'm a Google Docs girl
Yeah, like
too.
we
ran Primal Kitchen in
we-
Google Docs.
We are Google Docs only. Like
Yeah.
I've tried all the things, and it just makes for a small, lean business. It makes it more work, stupid corporate
Totally.
like headaches. Anyways, I went into a Google Doc, and I was like, how do I want people to feel when they're on my Instagram?
Yeah.
Like I want if I post something, is it helpful? Is it like making people feel bad, guilty, shameful, or is it putting them in the right mindset? Like that, I want to be helpful this year more than anything. And it like started in the middle of last year. Like I want people to learn something. I want it to be easy.
And feel good.
Feel doable.
Yeah.
Feel good. Feel relatable. Because the reality is like, there are nights when I'm sitting there and we are pulling home from flag football and I'm like, what am I doing for dinner?
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we having breakfast for dinner? Are we having Teton sausages for dinner? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
You know, like no one's going to do it right. And I think if I can provide value and be helpful, like that's where I'm at. And that's just not going to grow. That's not going to grow in the same way as sharing the viral stuff that I have access to, that I can easily like,
but you just don't want to show up in the world like that.
It's just like not.
No, it's not
authentic.
authentic.
It doesn't feel good.
No.
So
I'm like a big karma person. You got to like put out what you want to get back in the world.
And you always have. And so that's why I feel like
you too,
you could totally be you are no imposter syndrome. You are the personal brand of Waay. And we're going to make this happen because it's going to be fun and easy. Yeah. I'd drink it right now.
I would too.
I could totally use it.
I'm going to get samples next week.
How am I going to get to my 125 grams of protein
kidding.
today?
How are any of us?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, we're never going to be these 90s football players if we don't have some support.
Aminos, protein shakes, biltong. I need my Waay water.
I love it.
Morgan, I'm so excited that you came on the show.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah. So fun.
Yeah. So can we go to lunch now? Or
we can have a catch up before the next show.
We need to.
I would love that. But where can people follow along? Where can they find updates for Waay?
I'm just Morgan Zanotti, Zanotti on social media that I have deleted from my phone, but my cousin's very good about posting videos. I take myself there. So if anyone wants to follow along, I'm there. And then Waay is drinkwaay.com. So WAAY. There's like a really ghetto landing page up there now with an email capture, and I'll keep you posted when the product launches.
Go sign up for those emails. Yeah. I'll be the first one to buy when I get that newsletter.
I love it. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at BeWellByKelly.com and follow me on Instagram at BeWellByKelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.